The interesting thing about these political cartoons is, or even cartoons in general, different art pieces, what you start to notice is that everybody has a differing idea. And there's a set thing that everybody can agree to or agree upon, but generally you're going to get different ideas or different viewpoints on these topics. In the case of this cartoon, the political cartoon had been about that idea of king, the solitary, I am king of the world, I am the main ruler. And so in this, that idea of, you have the monarchy, you have the one person on the pedestal or a dais or up above everyone else. And then when you think about it, there are so many teams, movies, TV shows, just music, places, food that has king in the name. So for one part, that was what it was meant for. You have the king or you have the queen and they're on a dais, they're up above everybody, so to call something king gives it that air, gives it that ability to be that step above. But, in the case of this, you have so many things named king, then it starts to eliminate the word itself. Okay, cool. It starts to diminish its power. The more a word gets used, or overused, then the power of that word begins to decrease. In this case with king, if you have King Triton, he's the leader of the water world. Water world. You have various kings. You have the Queen of England currently, which puts her up at that status, to bow down to her or to have that level of respect. At the same time, if you follow the basketball, you have the Sacramento Kings, the hockey, LA Kings. We'll see how well I can do with this. And Kings of Leon, the music, Kings of comedy shows, or comedians, King of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, King of pop, Michael Jackson, Lion King, which is funny, just because the video that I posted is similar to what the Lion King was talking about, which is also a connection to Hamlet. So in English classes, you may start seeing a lot of, this is totally a non sequitur, but it just popped into my head. You might see in a lot of English classes draw to Shakespeare. And certainly, if we talk about that stereotypes idea or the single story, there happen to be a lot of English teachers that put Shakespeare up on a pedestal, like king. If you were going to use his title, to put that title to him, it could be king of drama or king of poetry, king of writing, those kind of things. And I had an English teacher once that explained that if you wanted to be an English major, you had to have 3 things under your belt. You had to be knowledgeable about Shakespeare. You didn't have to like the guy or like the writing, but you did have to be knowledgeable about it. You had to be knowledgeable about the Bible. Again, didn't have to have faith or believe in it, but be knowledgeable about it. The third one is that you had to have a dirty mind, because all of these things occur in all of literature. A lot of what you'll be reading here or in future classes, there is a connection to each of these pieces. And even in real life, that's what some of these things are talking about. So in the case of Shakespeare, you're talking about king's brother that tried to usurp the throne by dubious means. That happened in real life as well. Well, a few other things, but that was one part of it. King Cobra. Here's where I started to fall. Forgot exactly where King Cobra came from. And then King Crab. Yep, no. King of the Road, I think, is a song. Burger King is the food place. King of the Hill is the TV show. King of Queens is a TV show. And I liked how somebody made in the comments, Tiger King. Again, Netflix, or TV show that's using that as the pinnacle or something that would rise above things. It became not necessarily a trademark name, it became a way of imprinting or making that idea of our heads. This is the impetus, something great when you use these terms. But, like a lot of people were mentioning, because of that, a monarchy system is kind of fallen by the wayside. You look at England, and yeah, they have a Queen of England, and she does have a lot of her power still. She could go over to Canada and tell Canada, yeah, I don't like what you're doing here, and fire the Prime Minister. Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, I think, are still under the control of England. But they have a prime minister, they should be listening to their people and trying to do right by their citizens. I can't for the life of me remember the name of what that is called. Because they are functioning as their own entity, however, they're still under the control of England, so the Queen can go into these countries and tell them, you know, I'm going to fire you, and we're going to do things this way. In England itself, she still can talk to the people, she still can make a lot of decisions, but the way that it has been restructured a bit, though not on paper, is more of a constitutional monarchy. They just don't have a constitution part in place. They don't have written documents saying how they're going to do things. It's just understood. You have the Prime Minister and you have the House of Lords, and they operate a bit like what you see in the United States. Difference being, United States, it's not a king or a queen. In England, they still have that, and they still follow those things. Biggest controversies that have happened for England is marrying outside of any nobility. No lord, no lady, not even somebody of high stature. And definitely huge controversy marrying an American. No matter how many years it's been, America and England still get on each other's case about the American Revolution. Telling England. However, Harry, I believe, is the second born, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So then it was a big deal, but it was like, well, you're the second born, the firstborn, he needed to be married to an Englishwoman of some kind of stature, so. They still didn't get away from that. So, I felt like I went around the answering part of that, but in this, the artist, at least from my perspective, is they're making an argument about the trademark infringement, which I believe one person had talked about business. Yes, trying to hold on to something. So, if I go back to when I was talking about Shakespeare, in Shakespeare's time, or just when he was starting to get pretty popular, they did not have copyrights. They didn't, I write my name on something and this means it's mine. A lot of what had been written, Shakespeare started stealing, saying, oh yeah, no, it's totally mine. And then when a lot of the arguments started going, we need to have a way of securing our work or our property, that's when Shakespeare said, oh, totally, this is mine because it's my name, so that's why it's me, and continued on, so forth. But with that idea of trademark infringement or copyright issues, That is something that a lot of people, even today, a lot of businesses try to take control of a word so that it's their word and their power, which I'll come to here in a moment. But they want that power over a word. And words can be very powerful. They can hold a lot of meaning behind it. But like I said, the more that it's used, the more or the less power it has. And in most recent times, I think you guys have seen the first participation thing. I played this game called Warhammer. It's created by a company called Games Workshop, and quite a few years ago, it might have been within the last 5 years, one of their trademark armies are called the Space Marines. And when you look at a lot of different films, or you look at different TV shows, they have mention of Space Marine. Aliens movie, they're the Space Marines. They're Marines in space. And so, at some point, I forget exactly the spark that lit this, but Games Workshop tried to have trademark infringement on Space Marine, because they were claiming that that was theirs. They ended up losing the argument because if you have a Marine, if you have a soldier that is a part of that branch, a Marine who does these actions as what is listed for the Marines, and you put them in space, it's going to be a Space Marine. We have a word that means that. We have those two words that mean that. So what Games Workshop ended up doing was going to some Latin terms and created the Astartes, which Space Marine by any other name, but the Astartes then, because nobody else was using it, that they could make their trademark and nobody else would be able to say, these are the Astartes, kind of thing. So overall, the cartoon worked in a couple of different ways, not just explaining how the name and the monarchy part is a bit outdated. We don't have people sitting up on pedestals or daises that we revere, and we've overused the term king. I think they even had a king fries at some point, somebody, somewhere. Or to say, I am the queen of complaining. It's just to say I complain a lot. More so than the people in my life. So those are some of the things. So it worked in a couple of different ways. But what you're probably going to see through each one of these is that everybody has a different way of seeing something. And different way of explaining things. Like I said, after reading through everybody's so far, somebody had mentioned the business portion of that, and that is true. That is one of the things that they're talking about, especially with the words trademark infringement. And then, like I said, the more a word is used, it diminishes its value. I'll give you another example of that, just to kind of talking about words themselves. Cursing has a particular place, and curse words over time have changed. Blood and bloody ashes would be a curse word, generally used in a book, but had been used at one time to say blood or bloody hell or something like that. It is the way that, just to express like holy crap or something along those lines. Even crap itself is a curse word. And one part is the way that a word is used. I mean, you could take something, skull. Use it enough times, it could become a curse word in itself if there's no other explanation around it. But the more that the words are used, then the less power they have for that particular expression. And not to say that cursing isn't altogether a terrible thing. A lot of people do it, and it's usually that I need to release, I have reached a point of anger that the words, I just need to get them out, kind of thing. And this deep, guttural rage might occur. Or it's just me, I don't know, maybe you guys are all pretty even keel, which is good. But I have known people in my life, at least, that every other word might have been the F word, might have been the S word, might have been whatever possible cursing you could think of, so that all of that just got taken out. It wasn't useful anymore. And anytime that that person would then say the word, it's, alright. It's an adjective now, it's plain, common day. It doesn't have the same power. At the same time, for another example, you all might have a different perspective of this. From my family's perspective, we do not say, I love you to each other. That's just not something that was common in my family. And the reason it is not because we show that we care. We do things for each other. We help one another. And therefore, it does not need to be said, number one. Number two, outside of our family, we had seen so many people that would say, I love you. I love you, 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 I love you. So much so to the point that when it was shown you're being beaten, you're being hollered at, you're being put down, oh, but I love you, or oh, but I love this, then the word itself has lost meaning. It doesn't carry that same weight. And so that was an interesting thing, learning about that from my family, why we don't say that. So we wanted to show we need the action to speak for that particular thing, because it's so easy, case in point, the overuse of the word king, it's so easy to overuse these words, or to take away that power, or to take that meaning away. There are a lot of words today that we still have that powerful of meaning. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. I think it was on the news at some point. This was, I believe, years ago. But on the news, they were talking about which word was worse, cracker or the N-word. And somebody came on and said, if there's one out of those two, the word you can't say is the worst word. That's how you determine it. One can't even be said, or shouldn't be said. And the other one, before I had learned what it actually was, I thought was just the saltine snack. Took me a long time to figure out, that's how it's being used. In that, the thing that I've been touching on here and there, that power. In the video, you all saw that part with the monarchy. The human wrenches. The uncle that's hanging out off to the side and then suddenly comes in to attack because he wants the power. In a lot of that case, at least with the monarchy part, in a lot of the stories, there ended up being a need for power. One part being, my genetic code is perfect, which I did like. Somebody had posted a picture showing, that's not always the good thing. Too much of inbreeding causes genetic malfunctions. It's not good. We actually need to blend and mix and say, yay, cool, everybody, because that's the only way our genes are going to get better. Everybody brings something new to the table, or to the mix. In the case of the monarchies, most of everything that they were doing was to have that power. It became less about how to help the people and more about needing to control everything, so that then the poor people that they were under control, that were under them, did not have a lot of help. And that came from all over. It's not just in Europe, though those were the strongest points to go to. Um, England, Scotland had lairds. They didn't really have kings. They had different, and lairds, lords. They had different groups here and there. And huge, you had the one castle where the laird would be in, and then they had their land that would spread out. And for Scotland, they did do a lot of fighting. They did, I don't like you, you don't like me, and then let's duke it out, and then, alright, everybody's cool, let's drink. Mourn the dead, kind of thing. But they had an interesting culture. And they did they had their rules, their morals, and they worked well together. In Ireland had, trying to remember exactly, I think they did have kings, but it was, if you listen to their speech, it's very lyrical. Sing-song, and even, you have the Irish jigs and such, drinking songs. They had dances and songs. That was one part that they reveled in. And so the reason why I started making I started getting the idea that Wales, Scotland, and Ireland were making so much noise that England decided to march over and take over the entire island just to get everybody to be quiet. Because the English themselves are very reserved, quiet, don't make a whole lot of noise. Then you have France, Spain, and Portugal that also had their kings, and a way to keep having power, or maybe to not have fighting, or that imperialist nature. They would marry off sons and daughters just so that they could keep the line going. And most everything was always an arranged marriage. Hardly anybody ever married for love. Yeah, whatever, I guess I'll get used to you. I hope not to kill you. Until you got to King Henry the Fifth. Yeah, the Fifth. Who needed a son, and none of his wives were producing sons, so he started murdering them. Because obviously it was the woman's fault. History has shown actually it was his fault. So somewhere, if you believe that the spirits are about, yeah, I hope that those wives are getting their hits and kicks in at him. So, or killing him over and over again. I don't know. I don't know how the spirit world may work, if there's a spirit world. But that was one part, at least in Europe. But everywhere else, they did have either a chief or an emperor, different things like that, something of power. And the reason why I was saying most kings, queens had that idea of just power is because there were a couple of kings and queens that did care about their subjects. They did want to help. But in everything we have the human wrenches, so that are after that power. I must have ultimate control, which then leads into imperialism. The need to have so many things under your belt so that you can have ultimate power. The Greeks had part of that, the Romans had part of that, Egyptians. And then you get back into England. Certainly. England had one of the biggest imperial natures. Like I said, they had Australia. They went to a whole other island across an ocean to gain more land because of their criminal parts. In England, they ended up with so many jail cells. They were building. They ran out of room to keep putting all their prisoners in. So that's when they took over Australia. And if you happen to go into the store, there's a wine bottle that says 19 crimes. there were 19 crimes specifically that would send you to Australia. So the Australians, one part for their accent, had been because of that. They were of that class system, a little bit. For England, they had the lower caste, and the lower caste, or the lower class, had a particular accent, so that's what transcribed over there in Australia. The thing of it is, wherever England was going, there were people there. And those people either had to assimilate, or there was going to be fighting. Most often there was fighting. But England got Australia, got Canada, had New Zealand, and the people that were living there going, oh, hi, yeah, that's nice, but we put a flag, so this is now ours. Did that to India. Went over to India with their flags, planted the flag, and the Indians were there saying, excuse me, we live here. Say, yes, but this is now ours. But we've been here for years. But we have a flag. Do you have a flag? We planted a flag. If you ever get a chance, check out Eddie Izzard. He is a fun comedian. He has a lot about that. The English running around planting their flags or showing, we have guns. Now what are you going to do? Good old history. But that was one part with England. Japan had also had, even though they had, there was feudalist Japan, a lot of fighting, infighting and everybody until they became unified. And once the unification process, then we are the best, everyone else is beneath us, and so try to take over things. In World War II, just before America got into the war, Japan had started crossing into China and trying to take over the Chinese, because the Japanese thought less of the Chinese. The Chinese themselves trying to have their separate areas, but had their emperor, and everything was done for the emperor. You had to follow all the rules according to the emperor. A dude sitting in an imperial city far away from everybody, telling everyone else what to do. One part of that, every time there was a new leader, riding around telling people, hey, we gotta do, this is the new rules. And sometimes it wasn't telling people what the new rules were, sadly. In the case of England, England comes up a lot in these examples. In the case of England, had riding out to the fields. What religion are you? I am a good Christian, because at one point it was Christianity. Oh no, we're actually Catholic now, so die. And so, all right, next time riding out, what religion are you? I am Catholic. Nope, we're back to Christianity. Die. And so eventually it was just like, can't you just tell me, what's the answer? Can I tend to my sheep? I'm a sheep herder. I want to hang out with them. They don't judge me. Just tell me what the right answer is. And that was at least one part in England. They had a back and forth between religion, and everybody had to believe the same. So you can kind of see, and we're not talking about the United States yet until towards the end of the semester. But you can see why, for the United States, so much of that was written into the Constitution. And then, with the Constitution in the Bill of Rights, saying, well, we want freedom. We want to be able to believe what we want, and not have anybody come and tell us we're wrong. Or this or that. And there is an article in the Constitution that talks a whole lot about laws and not having full prisons, because that was one of the reasons they came over here, started colonizing England, came over to North America and started colonizing, One part, to have more land. Second part, cool, we have indentured servitude, we have a lot of Scotsmen that we need just go away, go do something else, sent over to America to work, to then have your freedom, or work freedom at the time. Because England had an interesting way of freedom. Freedom so long as you followed all the rules. Though a lot of people might make the argument that that's what we see today, but that's a different argument. Or not necessarily a different argument, but a different story. Where else was I going with that? Imperialism. So Japan had a very imperialistic nature. So did, like I said, England. France and Spain also had a lot. France had the middle section of North America. Russia also had expanded. They had where Alaska is. That was their thing. And I believe it was Alaska and part of Oregon, I think. Part of Washington. So they had that northern part. Spain had California and Mexico regions. The reason why Mexico has a lot of influence from Spain. What else was there? Going a little bit further into that imperialism, America, though, had, we want freedom, we want that, everything's cool. Oh, but hey, look at those other, that land over there. I think I want that land too. So, given where Americans came from, you can see a connection why they then, let's get the Louisiana Purchase and purchase that from France. Let's keep expanding out westward. And there is a specific reason why they did not continue south or continue north. Though I think that has to do with just before the Civil War. As America started to get more states, there then rose a lot of further tension, between the North and the South, dealing with slavery. And that was a whole other issue, but I believe that was the reason why they did not continue north into Canada or south into Mexico. But it had been talked about. I forget which president it was, they had considered going down into Mexico because Mexico was having a lot of infighting after Mexico told Spain to get out. Would have been a very different world today. But that's not necessarily where America stopped. They also continued outward to Hawaii and got Hawaii, though that didn't become a state until it was quite a long time before it became a state. Acquired Alaska at some point, and there are some additional islands that also fall under the United States. So that's another part of the historical pieces for imperialism, that it's not just back in the past, it did continue outward. And you'll see in today's Free Write, when I release that, some may argue that imperialism still occurs today. But I leave that in your hands for your critical thinking. Your Free Write number 2 for today. When you get the chance, unless you're starting to do it now while I'm talking, I can't see your screen, so. You will see 3 political cartoons. The first one is a bit older. Forget exactly when, but definitely when a lot of the countries had been more established. You'll see what I mean in the background there when you get a chance to see it. Cartoon 2 is a little bit more recent, I think within the last 5 years, I want to say, is for Cartoon 2, and Cartoon 3 I believe is within the last 10 years or so. Now, for the free write, it says there you choose an Imperialism political cartoon below, so you're only responsible for one. However, if you do an additional one, you'll get an additional point. So, the free writes are worth 5. You have the potential to earn 7 if you did all 3, if you answered the questions for all 3 political cartoons. But you don't have to. You're only responsible for at least one. But it's the same questions as before. What is the message of the cartoon? How does the artist depict that message? And do you think imperialism exists today? If so, in what way? Alright, so it's a little different than before, than the monarchy one. In this, you're starting to think, like, do you think that imperialism exists today? And if so, in what way? So, it's going to be a free write. So you'll be submitting it in the free write section. That's going to be that resubmit button. If you did the first one, it'll be resubmit. If you haven't turned in any yet, then it'll be submit. So, and that is due by 11:59 p.m. tonight, or as soon as you are able to. And I'll be inputting grades shortly. I'm hoping today. So current event number 1 is due Friday. From what I last checked, I think at least one of you has turned in, or two people have turned in so far. When you see on the calendar, this is the current event is due here, you can go ahead and get that done ahead of time. If you don't have any questions, you feel like, okay, I think I know what I'm going to do, you can jump into that. If you do have any questions, you can always ask me. If you're not sure, maybe you have an article in mind, like, well, I think I want to write about this, but I'm not sure if that fits the topic, you can ask me. But otherwise, you can always start turning those in ahead of time. You don't have to wait till Friday. The only ones that I would recommend maybe, well, the essays I recommend waiting until a little bit closer to that due date. You can certainly turn them in ahead of time, but maybe give yourself that time to work through it, just so that it's not such not a disaster, such a panic attack. If I thought I did everything correctly, and then you look at the score like, I did not answer the prompt, or something. I don't know. Those would be the only ones. Maybe wait a little closer to the date to submit it. The debates you would have to wait because those happen at a particular day. Have we been in... No. I'm going to give details on Friday. I'm so excited to talk about the debates and some of the other things, but it's like, no, let's focus one by one. I don't want to lose anybody or confuse anybody on anything. So, yeah. For the first current event, are we required to add literary devices, or is it just rhetorical strategies for this one? Oh, you can use, you're not required to, though those simile metaphors, they are also considered strategies, depending on how it is used. So when you read something, if you see that it's a metaphor in the examples there, why is the author using that? It could be for a particular purpose, or the writer. They're using certain things, or using the simile. But you can certainly use those. Literary devices can also occur in essay writing, so it's possible either one. For clarification, the topic article has to be a controversial, right? Current event, yes. Correct. And controversy does not have to be completely, two people yelling out, how dare you, on the page. Any kind of controversy, any kind of debatable argument. two or more sides. Like I said, in the case of what I was just mentioning, Games Workshop arguing that the term Space Marine should be trademarked just for them, and anybody who uses it, they would be able to sue. But when it's a descriptive term for any veteran who is, for any military personnel of the Marine branch who is then in space, they become a Space Marine. So it's not something that you can hold on to, because then you're limiting the language for everybody else. I found an article that provides a first-hand account of interviews into why they should implement blank. Would that work as a current event? Why they should implement. So they are making an argument, and whatever blank happens to be, so they're making the argument encouraging people to do something. So that could be a current event that would work, yes. Like I said, it does not have to be such a controversial thing, although there are many currently, especially in 2020, that could work. In implicit terms, there is no why factor, but in the article it mentions in advocating the idea. Then that can work. And that can certainly be part of what you write, in terms of, maybe that's a critique from you that, there was not a why. Maybe if they had used that, maybe the argument might be more convincing. But that's something that you can write about. But yes, from what you're saying, it sounds like that would be a good article to use. And most often, what you're going to find is not that it's going to be such clear cut. I think that because, and these people are dumb, or whatever the case may be. It may not be as clear cut as that. That's where our practicing of critical thinking and analyzing the text comes in. But in this, it's just making sure that you're able to at least pull those apart. Not just go, dude wrote stuff and he sounded like this, and yeah, I guess I agree with him. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where in writing, it's not so much for the narrative essay, but your other essays, you're going to get to the point where it's like putting your foot down or something. I believe this because of these reasons, and just try to defy me, kind of thing. And writing doesn't necessarily become that dramatic, but the more research you do, the more that it forms that opinion. And certainly on college campuses, you start to hear that from your colleagues, from classmates. That's where it starts coming through in writing as well. Good essays are the most interesting ones, are the ones where somebody has taken that time, that research, and they have that passion, and they're explaining things, and at the end of it you can go, yeah, or how dare you! It caused you to feel something. And it's not the case with every article. There's quite a few where, so this is my idea, and I thought these things because of these reasons. The idea sounded pretty, and I thought it was kind of cool. If somebody were to speak like that for a long time, it might start boring quite a few people. Maybe, I don't know. I've had a lot of monotone professors, and even then I've had some professors that were so incredibly panicked to meet in front of students, and we needed to take a pill, and we needed to focus and not look at the students and try to, I'm just here trying to explain these points. And that was a teacher who was afraid of public speaking and was teaching public speaking communication. So very interesting. The teacher had explained he went into public speaking because of his fear. Okay. That was the reason why I did not want to be an archaeologist, was my fear of skeletons and being around skeletons, so. As much as I love Indiana Jones, I did not want to be around skeletons, and I don't like being dirty. I'm a creature of comfort. Being around that much dust and dirt and not being able to clean, just, nah, I'm good. So, there are many different paths and many different ways that people end up in their careers or in jobs. So, it's fascinating to me. But that's what makes people interesting. The journey and the experience and talking with people. So, voice could be another thing. It sometimes comes out as a literary device, but it can also be a part of a strategy. How we use our words to explain certain things. So if you happen to find an article where it sounded interesting, but as you read it, like, just, it's not doing it for you, it's not making any kind of sense, that could be a critique for the writer to say, had they used better diction, their argument may have been more compelling. Something along those lines. That can be a direction for you. And currently, since we have not gone over fallacies, you don't have to worry about those unless maybe in a previous class you got an idea about fallacies, and then you can incorporate that into this first one. But if you haven't, don't worry. Look at the strategies. You can talk about those. Free write number 2 is due tonight by midnight, or 11:59 p.m., or as soon as you are able to. To do it, you do not have to use Google to find articles, though you certainly can. Another one is Southwestern College. Their library database, articles and databases, they have a lot of articles there that you can find. Do try to find articles within the last 2 years at least. Something a little bit more current, but that's another avenue for you. It is an organized database, so you'll be able to find. I think you could put in the range of years, and that'll help you, guide you to, oh, hey, there's this. So, like I said, a couple of different ways to find that. They do have many topics, and like I said, it does not have to be political controversies. It can be anything that you happen to be interested in. An example that I used before was fashion. A lot of people in the fashion industry then have arguments. Proper length, proper fashion, what is considered for spring. And in that, I don't know if anybody has ever made this argument, but maybe I will one day. A couple of years ago, I went to New York. Had never been to New York City, and so let's go, let's have some fun. And it was early March, I want to say. They still had some snow on the ground, so it was still fairly cold. And coming from California, Southern California, specifically San Diego, I had boots and leg warmers and my pants and a shirt, sweatshirt, my raincoat, and my hat. Oh, I had my hood on and my hat, because I was freezing. And then, running around, saw some people with skirts on, or leggings, and what is wrong with you? How do you not feel this? And went to the store, thinking, oh, well, we need some more things, because I did not think it was going to be that cold. And when we went into the store, they were selling swimsuits. And what else was there? There was more of the spring clothes. So they had the dresses and the skirts and the polos and the tank tops. And I was, what? Why? I said, well, it's the fashion. And it's spring. So spring and fashion means the starting into getting ahead on the bathing suits, getting into more of the spring fashions, pastel colors. And I looked at them and said, have you been outside? The weather outside does not go with these clothes. No, it's fashion itself can determine what is in stores, even though that's not conducive to what is outside. So, anyway, even now, we're getting into the fall, so you're gonna get the scarves, you're gonna get the cool sweaters, all that stuff. It's still sunny and hot. So, I don't get it. fashion world does not make sense to me, though I've had some cousins getting into it, which is where I start reading into these things. Anyway, there's an argument right there. I don't know if anybody has made it, but that could be an argument against why are we listening to the fashion to Paris, saying, well, it's in the spring season, therefore we must have these clothes. The Earth has a different idea of what you should be wearing than the clothing designers. I'm sorry, you didn't ask for my opinion. That was all my opinion. You guys can have your own opinion, so. I didn't mean to step on anybody's toes with that. So that was the current events. Does anybody have any further questions? The only other things that I have on my sheets are for notes. Your narrative essay is due next Friday, September 11th, so you still have some time to write that. Right now, if you haven't already, starting to put some of the pieces together or try those note-taking forms, highly encourage you to be putting some of those together, maybe having, try a paragraph out or an introduction. See how the story might go. Some little practices like that might help. I was thinking that on Friday, we can talk some more about the narrative essay, and if anybody has any questions or a rough draft, something that they would like to go over, any extra questions they may have, we can take a look at that on Friday. And then the next piece is to make sure that you are getting the book, 1984. If you have not gotten it already, or decided what version you're going to get. Just as a reminder, there's PDFs, there's ebooks, audiobooks, and this website, Library Genesis, if you type in 1984 George Orwell, it'll give you a couple of different options, but it is a free site that you can get a PDF version of the book. So it is available to you all as an option to get the book. If purchasing it through other means or the like is a little difficult for you. But anyway, I wanted to make sure you all knew about that. And we will get into the book, or start getting into the book next week. This week is 2nd, next week would be the 7th, so the 8th is when, we would meet on the 9th, wouldn't we? We would meet on the 9th, so the 9th is when I'm going to be mentioning, hey, we're going to have, make sure to read these sections, and then have quite possibly discussion on the following Monday, the 14th. So, if you do get it, start reading Chapter 1, Parts 1 through 3. Otherwise, I'll mention that again next week. But if you have it, Chapter 1, Parts 1 through 3 is what we're looking at. Alright, so if you do have any questions or comments or something after the class ends, you can email me or send me a message through the Remind app. As a quick reminder for today, that's the free write number 2. It's due by 11:59 p.m. tonight, or as soon as you're able to. And current event 1 is due Friday. Other than that, I'll see you all Friday. Have a good day, everyone.